Forced adversity.
In the recent comic book Batman Urban Legends number 6 by Megan Fitzmartin and Bailan Ortega, white guy here, my bad, it shows Tim Drake, the third Robin, as he rescues his old friend Bernard from a cult that had kidnapped him. After all that, at the end of the story, Bernard asks Tim on a date. Tim says yes. Tim implies that he's had feelings for Bernard for a long time, that he's been compartmentalizing that part of himself that, had feelings for another man. So, Tim Drake, the third Robin, is bisexual. Does this break the character? Does it break canon? What's going on? Tim had a long relationship with another hero, Stephanie Brown. She's been known as Spoiler and Batgirl at different times. But his other most serious relationship was with his Teen Titans and Young Justice teammate, Connor Kent, also known as Superboy. He's a young clone of Superman. Now, for the most part, that relationship with Connor over the years was portrayed as just like a very, platonic but intense bromance, right? Like they were just really good buds, couple of straight dudes who really confided in each other, they trusted each other and all that. But, a lot of readers noticed over time that the feelings that they expressed for each other, the connection they seemed to have was a little more intimate than just a couple of bros broing out, you know what I'm saying? So revealing that Tim Drake is actually bisexual and has just kind of been hiding this part of himself isn't really, out of character for the character. It's kind of been something that's been in the background for quite a while now. He's also changed his superhero identity from Robin to Red Robin to Drake and then back to Robin. Something that a young person who's constantly looking for his identity and who he is, a lot of people go through that. Gay, straight, whatever. Tim Drake being queer makes a lot of sense in the meta context as well, like outside of canon. As you're probably well aware, for a long time, Batman and Robin were kind of, made the butt of gay jokes, homophobic jokes about how, that couple of guys living together and one of them wears short pants and so on. It's really easy. It's an easy joke to make. I used to make them. It's honestly lazy and overdone at this point to make those kinds of jokes. But this didn't just start on the internet a few years ago or anything, right? This has been a concept that's been in the public consciousness, maybe not as a joke. It was taken a lot more seriously in 1954 when Frederick Wortham released his book, Seduction of the Innocent. You may know that Frederick Wortham essentially, adopted a crusade against comic books, and he pretty much succeeded in killing a lot of different types of comic books that were popular at the time. Horror comics, like he was responsible for a lot of censorship in the comic book industry. He said that comics made children violent and antisocial. Characters like Batman and Robin got it the worst from Wortham, because in his mind, he saw them as a gay couple, and as he said, a wish dream of two homosexuals living together. It's pretty stupid. But back then, in the 1950s, conservatives, it's always conservatives, freaked the fuck out. Sales of comic books tanked. The whole industry came really, really close to just ending because of this one guy and his hack bullshit book, where he was basically just projecting his own, insecurities onto what he saw in comic books. Now, DC did survive, but they made a lot of changes to appease the new Comic Code Authority. One of the things that DC did in response to this to, make Batman not seem queer was created the character of Batwoman. Ironic because, more recently in the comics, she has been actually a lesbian character. So, in that way, making Robin bisexual is also a similar kind of fuck you to 1950s conservatives, and specifically Frederick Wortham, because, just fuck that guy. What a dipshit. Now, Batwoman, Kathy Kane, at the time also had a niece named Betty, who became Batgirl. And that Batgirl became a girlfriend for Robin, who was at the time Dick Grayson. But as far as they were concerned, this would put, conservative parents' minds at ease so that they knew that their kids weren't going to turn into homosexual deviants or whatever. And as you probably know, eventually all of that nonsense, the panic over Batman and Robin being gay and whatever else that people were afraid of that Frederick Wortham had lied about and made shit up about. Batwoman and Batgirl were kind of written out of the comics for a long time. So the sincere panic and fear that a lot of, idiot parents had at the time, that kind of died down. But what remained in its wake was innuendo. As it became less of a thing to panic about, it then became more of a thing to joke about. DC continued to respond to this in the comics by, making Dick Grayson a ladies' man similar to Bruce Wayne. He dated Batgirl, Jim Gordon's daughter Barbara. He also dated Starfire. But with DC deciding to make Tim Drake Robin queer, bisexual in the current comic books, that's kind of a continued fuck you to Frederick Wortham and all of the nonsense that came after his crusade against comic books, right? Robin's being queer is now something to celebrate rather than something to struggle and fight against. Tim Drake was my Robin. He's the one that was introduced in the comics very shortly after I started reading comic books. But this made him the character in DC Comics that I could most relate to. I thought Batman was cool, obviously. Who didn't think Batman was cool as a kid? But I didn't really relate to him, right? Robin I could relate to. And that allowed me in a vicarious way to feel like I was Robin too. You know what I mean? Like I connected with Tim Drake. I could see myself in his position. And therefore I was in a, childlike fantasy way, I was fighting crime alongside Batman. So since I'm not bisexual and Tim Drake was my Robin and the one that I've connected with the most, how do I feel about this? It makes me happy as fuck because now there's even more kids, right, who can connect to Robin, Tim Drake, just like I did. But even more so if they're bisexual because, they're not just seeing a kid, they're seeing a bisexual kid who's able to be a badass and he can be a badass with hot women. He can be a badass with hot dudes and he can still kick lots of ass. And he's got a really great attitude. So they can see this badass superhero who just happens to have the same sexuality as them. And that's awesome. Straight fans, straight kids, straight comic book readers, you don't lose anything by Tim Drake being bisexual. It changes nothing about the character except who he dates, who he sleeps with. And it'll probably come up in conversation and stuff like that. But that's just how life is. There are bisexual people, right? They're people. There's no logic in feeling like Tim Drake's been ruined or that your childhood is destroyed or anything like that. Unless you have like a very fragile psyche and you define your childhood based on other people's connections to a thing or a fictional character's sexuality. If that's the case, you should really talk to somebody.